Hello everyone, it's Shel from Paper Rock TO Studio, and today I'm sharing with you my mixed media art journal page that I made using the challenge from the Mission Inspiration Facebook group, which is Mike Deacon Art's Facebook group. There's 8 steps, there's 3 colors, and there are 5 words to choose from. And you can choose whichever word you want to inspire you, or perhaps a couple. I chose scarecrow. Then the colors are midnight, which is black, fog, which is gray, and pumpkin, which is orange. So obviously this is going to be a fall page. The first step was to add texture or modeling paste, and I decided to use this autumn leaves stencil because I knew it was going to be a fall page, and I figured I was going to put a scarecrow on it because I like scarecrows, and I've already done one this month, so, or maybe that was last month, I don't know. Anyway, I figured I would do another one because it's fun. They really remind me of fall. And so decided crackle paste because I think that the leaves, when you pick up a leaf, you know, that's fallen from a tree that's turned brown or orange or whatever, and you look at it, it looks dry and crackly and has those little like cells on it, kind of, and that's what crackle paste looks like too. So even though this stuff annoys me because it takes a long time to dry, I still decided to use it. And then I also figured I'd throw in a little bit more texture around the edges of the page using this bead gel. It literally has glass beads in it, and it's in a kind of a heavy glossy medium with all these glass beads, and it's bumpy, and since I was going for texture already, I figured I'd add some of that too. So I applied that with a palette knife around the edges in between the areas where I had put the leaves. You really do need something flexible to add these different mediums, so sometimes I use a metal palette knife and sometimes I use plastic. This time I wanted to really be able to squish and smooth the bead gel so that the beads wouldn't be stacked one on top of another, so I used the plastic one. So I let that dry overnight. So everything's nice and dry, and the crackle paste has crackled and it's looking good. It's kind of hard to see. But the next step was to drip, spritz, spray, or drop color. And I decided to use my Marabou art sprays, which are the ones that dry permanent, because they're basically acrylic paint in a spray. Because I knew that I was going to be collaging over the top of this, because I knew I was going to add a scarecrow. Wasn't sure what else I was going to add, but I knew that I was going to be gluing stuff over the top of it. And if I used a water-soluble spray and then I tried to collage over the top of it, I would just make a big smeary mess. And so I didn't want that, so I decided to use the permanent spray that will dry on there and not smear, hopefully, once once it's all dry, good and dry. So the colors I picked are gray, and then I also used tangerine, and these are this is a German company. Yeah, and I got some from on my other page, which kind of made me mad. It's, you know, sprays are messy. They're just messy. It's a big mess. But I wanted to use the colors that were chosen, and I wanted it to be dark and a little bit, I don't know, moody and spooky, and so I picked the gray spray. And then I went over the leaf areas, so you can't, it's hard to see, but I put enough of that gray spray on there that it scooch down in between the cracks and crevices of that crackle paste and in between the beads, and it really gives it brings out the texture that you've put on there, and it makes a real interesting look. But I did want to add in the orange, so I went ahead and sprayed that on just the leaf areas, and then I used the straw inside the sprayers to flick orange and also gray splatters onto it. And then I took a white Posca pen and flicked it as well to add a few white splatters to finish up my background. And then there was a lot of drying involved. I was drying in between each step, trying not to make the gray and the orange mix together because that would just be some kind of nasty brown. Don't want that. Yuck. Then the next step is to add twine or string. But I decided before I was going to do that I wanted to darken up the edges a little bit. And so I used a Memento Tuxedo Black ink pad, which is a permanent ink, to just kind of scratch and smooth around the edges and make it darker. So then the next step was to add the twine and string. So I'm using Liquitex Gel Matte Medium, smoothing that onto the page, and then taking this twine that was sent to me by Jerry Bellini in my Recycling Parts for Art design team box. She had this stuff tied around everything, and it pulls apart really easy. It's not for, I don't know. I don't think it's good for tying things up really. It's pretty weak, so it's good for this. And what I'm doing is making kind of grass stalks or corn stalks, a pattern of that. And again, it's adding more texture because the string is sticking up from the page, which, I mean, this is a very textured page. You could really tell what it is just by feeling it. You wouldn't even need to be able to see. And so I'm stretching some of them straight. I'm curving some of them as if the wind has blown them over a little bit and they're bending in the wind. A lot of this does not show up at the end because it gets covered up by the rest of the page, but it's cool anyway, and the texture remains even through the rest of the things that I glue over the top of it. Because you can't really get rid of texture once you have it. It's there. It's not going anywhere. So the reason that I use the gel medium is because I really need something to stick it down, and then I not only put it on the page and pushed it into the glue, I also put it over the top. And then I had to dry the heck out of this. A lot of drying on this page. Luckily you don't have to watch all that. The next step was to hide or write a secret on your page, and I figured since the page is so dark, if I just wrote with graphite pencil, you'd never be able to see it, and only I would know it was there. So I just wrote along the stalks of the grasses that I put on there with this twine. I'm not going to tell you what it says because it's a secret. If I told you, it wouldn't be secret anymore, would it? Nope. Then I decided to take my protective tape off because I knew I wasn't going to be doing any more sloppy stuff on here, and I wanted to see the edges. I have this new obsession of taping all the edges on these pages so that I have a white border around everything. It seems so clean and nice that way. I don't know. It's a new thing that I'm doing just in this book apparently because I haven't done that before. So the next step was to add a focal image or 2 or 3. And so this is where I'm bringing in my scarecrow image. And of course, if there's a scarecrow, there's got to be pumpkins. So I'm using some of the gel prints that I made at the get-together that we had for Art Joy of Sharing. It was on a Zoom meeting, which is a software that you can get a bunch of people online together and you can see all the different windows and see all what the people are doing, and we had a gel printing session. So it was kind of like a class sort of, only it was really more just a chat. Everybody was just chatting and gel printing, and some people were just watching. If you want to get involved in that, you can join the Art Joy of Sharing Facebook group that Peg and I have, and that's where we would post any of those type of events that we would be having. So we're pretty picky about that group, so you need to answer the questions and make sure that you know the reason that you're there is not to be dropping links and trying to sell stuff, but to actually be sharing and helping others. So all these different prints, I'm just using those to cut out different pieces for my scarecrow, and this print is actually one that I did on the live stream I don't know, last Thursday, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, we did a gel printing live stream on our Art Joy of Sharing live stream channel, and then had the get together afterward, which was not taped, but this one was. It was recorded. So that piece you can see in the recording. And I think it's also one of the ones that I scanned to put in the files in that Facebook group so that people can use it. You can print it, and use it, because there isn't anything copyrighted on it. There's no stencils or anything. All these prints that I'm using today, there was no stencils involved. I used trash, literally trash, to make the patterning. So I think that the little shirt turned out cute because it kind of looks like plaid, and that was done with cardboard across the plate to make the plaid design, and I think it turned out really cute. The face shirt and pants and hat are deli paper weight paper that I printed, and the pumpkin is a cardstock weight, and the other pumpkin, the kind of more rusty green colored pumpkin, is text weight paper. So I'm using different glues. We've had this discussion on this channel lots of times about what mediums to use to glue things down. I just did not feel like getting out a wet medium to glue down all these deli papers. Normally I would use Liquitex matte fluid medium, but I decided to use the gel stick instead. Not gel stick, well, it's kind of like a gel stick. The glue stick, that's an Elmer's Extreme glue stick, to glue down those lighter papers, and then I used Aleene's tacky glue to glue down the heavier papers because I just didn't feel like getting out more mediums and having to do more heat tool drying, and I figured that these would stay on there good enough because it is a page in a book which is going to be shut eventually, and so it will be holding it down. I don't think I need to worry about things coming up. It's not like it's a canvas or something where it's going to get any use. It'll just be in a book, so no big deal. The next thing I did, this is a China marker, and it's kind of like an oil-based waxy crayon. I don't use it very often. It's clunky to me and it's messy. It's kind of like a waxy pastel where it's not when my hand's going over it, I'm getting black all over the side of my hand. It's messy. It gets a little bit more permanent once you blend it with a blending stump, which is what I'm doing now. That's a paper, sometimes they're called tortillions. Yeah, I always want to say tortillas because we eat a lot of tortillas. A tortillion blending stump. It's like wrapped paper, and you can sharpen it with sanding paper, which I never do, but just rubbing it against that China marker makes it kind of press down into the fibers of the papers and keep it on there a little bit better. I am also going to seal this with workable fixative when I'm done so that it doesn't smush all over the other pages. I might even put some beeswax over it, maybe, if I think that it's necessary, because I don't want this all over the page on the other side, which is a cute page with saguaro cactuses on it, which I've already gotten the gray spray on, so grr. That's how it is with art journal pages. So then to add a little bit of color into my scarecrow figure, I got out a Posca pen set that has brown and orange and red, and those are the colors I use. I end up using, oh yeah, I do end up using yellow too, to kind of give the impression of hay or straw sticking out where he's all sewn together, stuffed with straw. The last time I did a scarecrow, a lot of people had comments about whether they see them or not, or whether they knew they were a fall decoration. Apparently that might be a United States thing, or maybe it's in Germany too, so I don't know. But anyway, I'm sure I'll get more comments about that because to me, that is a very fall decoration that a lot of people would put on their porch with a hay bale and maybe some pumpkins or something. So the next thing, stamp text or patterns in ink or paint. I decided to use titanium white acrylic paint to bring in some lighter patterning into this background. This is a background stamp from Stampin' Up! And it has a cross-hatch pattern on it, and I thought it was perfect for this. So I'm applying the titanium white paint with a sponge brush onto the stamp, and then because the stamp is wood mounted, it's hard to press it down onto the page, and I'm even at one point standing up and pressing it down on the page because I wanted the pattern to show. Make sure if you're going to use a rubber stamp to use with acrylic paint that you clean it right away, because acrylic paint is basically plastic and it'll stick to the stamp and then make it not work well anymore. So you want to get that off there while it's still wet. Next step was to add a quote, phrase, or word. I went to my computer and I was looking around for quotes to use with scarecrows, and this one from The Wizard of Oz came up, and I thought that it was really funny and appropriate and true. And so I decided to add it to the page. So I just printed it out on my inkjet printer, and I'm sticking it down with that same glue stick. And as you can see, the texture's coming through because you can see where the string is underneath, and you can see where the glass beads are underneath as I stick those things down. Last step, add doodles, scribbles, or zentangles. And so this to me just means adding my finishing details that I always do, usually with Posca pins. And so I use my black Posca pin from the set to go around the quote and add little scribbles around it. And then I figured that the scarecrow would be all sewn together. You'd need to sew the openings of the shirt and pants shut to stuff it with the hay or straw, of course. And then all his other little bits and bobs are sewn on him. So I'm just drawing stitching all around in different areas and then adding some highlights. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Please give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications, all those things. And of course, that's it for me. Thanks. Bye-bye.